Hello, this is Michael Hexter. Welcome to my Politics 2100 video cast here on YouTube. So I'm calling this episode Manchin, Sinema, Gottheimer, etc. are Trojan horses within the Democratic Party Citadel. So this title makes some assumptions which I will lay out for you about what the Democratic Party what their mission is about, what their project is, but I wanted to point out that just put some language on what, when I describe it, will be intuitively obvious to people, let's say, who are on the left, who watch, channels like the Young Turks or the Majority Report, or other left of center independent media. So basically, in episode 26, I was talking about how the Democratic Party is hesitant to fight for what I called its hegemonic project, which is essentially a fulfillment, in my opinion. It's a fulfillment of the promise of the New Deal and the World War II mobilization to create a real social democracy, and in the case of the 21st century challenges we're facing, a climate-focused social democratic project. And that would be, let's say, the likely, if the Democrats stood for what they claim to want to do, and they did it in a way that was effective and not half-hearted, they would start moving on their policies like a Green New Deal, Medicare for all, a job guarantee, the child care benefits and paid family leave, provisions that are common in other developed countries but are not yet really law or settled practice here in the United States, as well as addressing our greatest challenge, the climate transition. So anyway, so it looks like in the negotiations around the infrastructure package / a reconciliation bill, that Sinema, Manchin, Gottheimer, some other figures in the party who are on the right wing of the Democratic Party are being obstructionists. They're obstructing what appears to be the agenda of the president, or let's say his professed intentions on the campaign trail, then also what he's putting forward. And furthermore, there are other bills that are must-pass bills if the Democrats really want to have a viable political party at all, and if we're going to have a democracy at all in the United States. And that includes some version of the For the People Act. Also, Biden should probably try to undo the damage he did in some of his bankruptcy bills he passed, and the student loan forgiveness. There are a bunch of different other parts of his project that are still hanging out there and not being achieved. But it seems like Manchin and Sinema and Gottheimer are obstructing, and furthermore, they're acting, as the title of this video says, like a Trojan horse within the citadel of the Democratic Party. Now, again, there's some assumptions there which I'm going to unpack a little bit, but I'm using this language to describe the danger that they present to the Democratic Party. In other words, that they would open the citadel of the party, or they are opening the citadel of the party, the fortress, so to speak, the position of the party to attack by Republicans, basically, or by the Republican-leaning Supreme Court. by freezing the party and not allowing the party to do some of its agenda, which is let's say a very light nibble on what would be a social democratic agenda, and some of this agenda comes up and is it's becoming more pressing, in part because of the effects of the pandemic and also the response to the pandemic, where we had government openly supporting the economy and also supporting ordinary people, and reducing child poverty through direct government intervention. So all of these things have evoked in people the expectation that government is going to do more and is going to do right some historical wrongs, and as well as act on the climate crisis, which is becoming more and more apparent to more people. And so the idea, though, that Democrats have this internal group of traitors, essentially, to their cause, or that are going to open the gates of the city as the Trojan Horse, the Greek Trojan Horse did within the city of Troy in the Greek legend, or potentially within the history of the actual wars between Greece and Troy. But anyway, this group of people are acting as if they don't really believe and they don't care about the agenda of the Democratic Party, or they sometimes act as if they do, but they make some, but they sometimes talk as if they do, but then they act entirely in a manner which says they don't care about the achievement of these goals. Okay, and they are now, whose Trojan horse are they? Now, who is the opposing side? Well, it could be the GOP is the owner of these Trojan horses, or more likely, or another version is that the donor class these are all Democrats who are very, very dependent on and very solicitous of donations from and therefore also for the wishes of various big money interests like fossil fuels, like banking, like pharma. And also in this bill, pharma is very much concerned about it because the pharmaceutical industry, because there's a drug price negotiation provision in it that it's key to passing the larger form of the bill, because it represents huge savings to the U.S. government. So anyway, these figures are breaching the party's ranks, and they're from within. And now you could say, well, this is just a partisan. I am an internal partisan of the progressives, which I am, but if you look at overall at what the party is trying to do and what the party needs to do, these actors are really just endangering the party overall. And it seems as though Joe Biden is sort of aware of this, and one of the I mean, he is a figure that is a little bit more complicated than just one description would suggest, but he has been quite a right-wing Democrat over his political career. He's now, as president, playing with and making motions toward a more center of the party, or maybe even left of the party, but certainly center of the party agenda, with everything considered, including the demands of the day. So he's someone who, on the other hand, he seems to be totally enmeshed in Washington sort of common sense, which is not commonsensical, but in the assumptions of the inside the Beltway culture, which include a reverence toward the institutions and toward their like the Senate and the Senate and its rules, where he was a senator for many years. Biden was. So this reverence kind of makes him someone who you would think would not be for realizing this democratic agenda, because the central assumptions of the Washington Consensus are bipartisanship over everything else, and bipartisanship means compromising the democratic agenda for the sake of pleasing the Republicans and pleasing the donor class, or not endangering the grip of the donor class on both parties. Okay, and a forthright democratic agenda endangers the grip of the donor class, because that would involve, if they pursue their agenda, it would involve cutting out many of the profitable routes of basically for corporations of making money, or that sort of it's sort of redundant to say that, but anyway, that it would cut out profitable businesses for big businesses for the government to get involved directly in some of the both social services and also some of the energy related projects, or certainly it would change the role of corporations to be more government contractors than to run certain sectors of the economy without the government being involved in them. So, I mean, there's both the danger of them losing some profit and also losing some control over these sectors, which, as the Keynesian Marxist economist Koletsky pointed out, was something that it was very important to business interests, not just whether they profit, whether they don't, but also whether they can control the workforce but also control the commanding heights of the economy. So, and this bill threatens to do that, and not entirely. It's not nearly a takeover, but it shows the way toward a more mixed economy, and an economy where the government, a strong public sector, is involved in a number of areas where it's currently involved, but it's involved in a much lesser way. And this has also been stylized from the right wing as being, communism and socialism and whatever. It's nowhere near those things. It just happens to be a movement in the direction of a bigger public sector, and their hair trigger response is always to make it seem like it's a despotic takeover of everything in the society by the Democrats and by government. So, but anyway, so these actors within the party are that Biden and other members of the leadership like Pelosi and Schumer force themselves, or have forced themselves, to treat these people who I'm calling Trojan horses or traitors to the cause of the Democrats from within, as colleagues, and as prospective colleagues for that matter, in part because of the bipartisan common sense, the bipartisanship, canard. It's a hoax. It's but it's the dominant one in both the media, and the media tries to enforce this bipartisanship, compulsion for parties and for political actors. So anyway, so this having been forced to, or maybe even wanting to treat these traitors to the cause of the Democratic Party as colleagues and esteemed colleagues and so forth and so on, means that they cannot be, or they not cannot, but they would need to change that orientation in order to really attack them and say, or let's say, put great pressure on them publicly and privately to play along with the party's agenda, or to play along to make it clear to them that what they're doing is destroying not only the Biden presidency, but also potentially the democracy itself, because it appears as though the Republicans are heading directly toward neo-fascism, an anti-democratic, neo-Confederate system that makes elections superfluous, and these actors are not on board for that, with that. So, and there's one key issue on which the leadership could act, and they don't, and that is on the filibuster, and moving to both campaigning against the filibuster in public, and also saying that they're going to press to end the filibuster. And that's something that both Manchin and Sinema are against, but a pressure campaign would need to be mounted on them to explain that they are supporting the Jim Crow filibuster, the filibuster that's anti-democratic, that allows one senator to, or a minority of senators, let's say, to hold up the Congress, the whole entire, and in fact the whole government. And Joe Biden's utterances in the past that he is in favor of the filibuster, that he doesn't want to change it. And now recently he said, well, maybe for the debt ceiling we will change the filibuster. It seems like he's waffling on whether the filibuster is a sacrosanct tradition in the Senate or not. So that waffling has a political cost, but also it evokes a sense of that there's this confusion on the part of Biden and the Democratic leadership about what they're really, what is their plan going forward, and what is their and it almost all revolves around whether they're for the filibuster and also for expanding the Supreme Court, and their determination to pass voting rights legislation, which all of those things are linked together, or certainly the first and the third are linked together. And this is where my thesis about these people being Trojan horses in the Democratic Citadel starts to fall apart a little bit. So it starts to fall apart in the sense that the, let's say, the Trojan leadership in the Democratic Citadel, or whatever, the Democratic leadership is actually somewhat in agreement with Manchin and Sinema about the stasis they want to enforce in Washington, so that they are split between a position that, like Biden and Pelosi and Schumer, are split between a position of saying we have to get things done, we have to reform voting rights, and therefore we have to get rid of the filibuster, and saying no, we have to maintain gridlock in Washington. We have to, because our donors want gridlock, and this is something that I've in past episodes have been mentioned, and that gridlock in Washington is what Wall Street likes, and they don't, among other interest groups, but Wall Street is particularly powerful, or certainly you can notice in how the markets do what they like and they don't like in terms of public policy when they react to certain policy decisions. But anyway, the whether the leadership is really committed to their agenda or not. And if they are committed to it, they would need to address the filibuster. And they need to also countenance the fact that some of their donors, their mega donors, are going to be angry with them or going to be upset with them. And that's really where the Democratic Party is at. Whether this, what I'm calling the citadel of the position, the hegemonic project of the Democrats, which is tangentially anti-big donor and if not in a socialist sense, but in terms of revolutionary sense, but in a sense of being very strong reformists who are willing to regulate and break up, do antitrust among other things, but also do public investments that change the business of their donors and change how the donors think or at least go against what the donors think the government should be doing on a day-to-day basis. And also obviously with the fossil fuel industry is extremely, not only is the pharmaceutical industry extremely upset, but the fossil fuel industry is any strong move toward an electrically, it's not powered, but that basically the power of vehicles and transportation is transmitted through electricity, means that gasoline and then eventually maybe also natural gas are made less important in the economy and eventually sidelined, and their businesses are affected radically if the U.S. makes a decisive turn, as for instance Norway has done in terms of e-mobility, electric mobility, and that will endanger those industries directly. So they're fighting, if not for their lives, but for their profits and their control of certain sectors of our economy. And so anyway, so the Democratic leadership would need to, in order to keep their citadel together and to keep they would need to commit themselves to this hegemonic project and either put maximum pressure on their Trojan horses or boot them out of the citadel and harvest the consequences in terms of, like, for instance, losing the Senate temporarily until 2022 and maybe perhaps gaining some seats to get it back. And that's something that they need to countenance that kind of if they should be doing a pressure campaign against these renegades or these Trojan horses, and they should be but again, this depends on their fundamental commitment to their own ambitions, to their own political project, and it's not clear that they have that commitment. And they would need to. It's internal. It's part of their identities in a way that they would need to say goodbye to. They would need to mourn a certain image of themselves as being this sort of bipartisan creature of Washington that is also the best boy or best girl or whatever, best the most favored politician of these mega donors and these huge industrial concerns that basically fund many of their campaigns. So anyway, so I think this is I'm recasting in different language what you can find in other podcasts and in other transmissions, but I think this is a language that I has some durability in understanding it as a hegemonic project, the Citadel, and then what is the commitment of the Democrats to that project, the Democratic leadership. There could be conceivably another hegemonic project that is about this sort of bipartisan blob, but then that makes the Democrats no longer if the other party, which the Republicans are defecting from this bipartisan blob, and they're saying, no, we want to have sole domination by controlling the quote unquote electoral system and having complete control over it, then that project is endangered from outside. So they haven't come to terms. The Biden, Pelosi, Schumer, and others in that leadership group haven't come to terms with the radicality and of the Republicans in terms of their becoming insurrectionists, becoming neo-fascists, and having a slow coup against the government. And so they are unprepared to have that fight, and I think they should be having that fight. They have to be having that fight, but that requires them to, as I'm saying, to mourn their sense of who they are as politicians, and I'm not sure they're ready for that. So anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please like it, and please share your comments, of course, below in terms of reactions to my commentary here. And also, if you're enjoying this channel, please subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.